Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Community Preservation Committee of October 4th, 2023. This meeting is being conducted live and by remote participation pursuant to the executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law signed by Governor Baker, taking effect March 12th, 2020, and subsequently extended through March 31st, 2025 under Governor Healy. You can participate or log on to this meeting via Google Meets or by phone, and I would ask for a motion to open the meeting.
So moved.
Second, Larice. Thank you. Because we are hybrid tonight, I'm going to ask for a roll call and everything. So, Dawn?
Yes.
Dwight?
Yes.
Olabumney?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Larice?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Now I would ask, tonight we're also holding our public hearing, so I would ask for a motion to open our public hearing,
So
please.
moved.
Do I have a second? Second, Larice? Thank you. Again, by roll call, Don Brady?
Yes.
Dwight?
Yes.
Olabumney?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Larice?
Yes.
John? Yes. Chair votes yes. All right. I think tonight we're going to start with the treasurer report because it's the most detailed. Michael, would you like to take over? And
Sure, if you can throw it up on the screen, Mark. And
Sure.
for the members of the committee, there's a lot
I
of,
can do that.
I got it.
whichever.
I've already got it up.
You've seen a good chunk of this before. It's made up of what we looked at annual town meeting and at an earlier CPC meeting with some updates for the FY 2023 spending as of the end of September. So just a quick rundown of what we're going to look at. We're going to look at the CPA revenue and expenditures for 2009 through 2022, the 2024 budget, and then we added in the 2023 expenditures for both the administrative operating accounts as well as all of the project accounts. Included in the presentation is all the backup that was at town meeting. We're not going to go through that detail, but it is here. So if a question came up, we may reference it, but if we go to the next slide, Mark. And we're just shy. Barry and I talked about this, that the CP2, which is the key report to summarize the annual, is due at the end of October. So we don't have all that detail. I tried piecing some of it together, but there's so many moving pieces that interrelate that it's almost, I'm afraid it wouldn't be worth the effort of what would come out of it, but we will talk to it. So what we've got here is the revenue from 2009 when we adopted it through 2022, the last year for which we're filed with the state. And just a quick rundown, I mean, we've collected $9 million in surcharges from the town residents of the town. We've floated about just under $4 million in bonds. Our state match is $2.7 million, and then some other miscellaneous funding of about $700,000 that comes in. So that's just a big picture where all the money came from. And on the next slide, we can see what we've done with that in terms of how we've spent it. We've spent $3.2 million on recreation projects, $2.5 million on historic resources, historic preservation, $1.9 million in debt service, $1.3 million in open space, community housing of about $400,000, and then the admin and other a little under $200,000.
Just a quick question. I think you got this last time you presented. The debt service goes into those other buckets, right?
It is not a piece of that.
Oh, okay.
No, it is not included in those other buckets. These add up to the total spending. I flip-flopped the answer on you last time, so I can stop thinking about it so I don't do that again.
But it is represented in the overall expenditures on recreation and historic, but...
No, it's not part of the 3.2 million.
No, I understand that, but out of that 3.2, some of it may have been borrowed, is my
No,
point.
he's saying on top of
No.
3.2.
So that's on top of.
The money that was spent for the project is reflected in the 3.2.
Right.
The interest, when we floated the bond, is on the
Different
debt
animal.
service. Yeah.
Right. However, out of that 3.2, we may have borrowed some of that
Yes,
3.2,
yes, yeah.
and that would be, so, go on, sorry.
Okay, no, it's, next slide. The FY '24, so the year that was just approved at town meeting, we were projecting surcharges of $844,000 with a state match of $192, which is always a very conservative estimate, as the folks on the committee know. The state basically gives advises the towns what to do, and most years it comes out significantly higher, obviously depending on how the budget situation is for the state, so there's no guarantees, but it's $192,000. And then the interest we have on the funds that are sitting in the town's bank accounts, about $15,000. When we talk about how we're going to spend the money, the town keeps the money in a bunch of different accounts. The way the CPA is designed, there are 3 funds: the community housing, the historic resources, and the open space funds, that we have to put at least 10% of our annual money into those funds, and then we spend out of that, and then the balance, which is 75% of the total revenue, goes into the undesignated reserve. So this is kind of just an accounting thing, but it does show that when we talk about money coming out of a specific fund, or that there's so little money in open space, doesn't really mean anything. It does, I mean, we have money to spend if it's on an open space project. It's just going to come out of the undesignated reserve and whatnot.
Don't we generally drain that? We'll use
yes.
open space.
We drain the reserves first.
Yeah.
So the open space, all along, I mean, obviously the biggest project we've done to date is still Glen Echo. And so the annual interest and whatnot comes out of the interest in.
We're getting
capital coming
close,
out of
though.
that.
The other important point to make here is that the recreation spending comes out of open spaces.
Recreation and open space are combined, because when the law first came out, it was kind of one category, but we do look at that total, as we saw in the earlier slides, because I think it's important to us to see it that way.
And I agree with you, but the way the state looks at it.
The way the state
open
filings
space
look
is
at it, it's still in one fund, so.
Yeah. Next.
Next slide. We were very pleased at annual town meeting this year. We proposed 11 projects, but $2.3 million, almost $2.4 million. We got approval on every one of the projects. In addition to that, we have $700,000 worth of debt service that we have to pay off in 2024. And then the admin expense is planned at 5%, but as we'll see when we look at the 2023 expenditures, we've never come close to spending the full admin expense.
We came close on pieces of it, but no.
We come close on pieces, but not in total.
Yep.
So here's the new information for the committee. This is the FY 2023 expenditures through the end of September 29th. And this is really a breakdown of the operating accounts, so you have, it's really the admin. You see the salaries, the consulting fees, advertising and freight. The budget was $50,000 and we spent $30,000. So it's probably higher than we spent in the early years, but as Mark referenced, we have had a couple of years where we may have spent even a little more than that, but we generally come in pretty favorable on these accounts.
I also want to make note that the cost of our advertising has increased tremendously due to the disappearance of our local newspapers. We're forced on public advertisements to use like the Patriot Ledger or the Enterprise, which are becoming more and more expensive every year, and I think that's reflective there. If you look at it from
Yeah, if you look year over year,
yeah.
you're absolutely right. That when we had the local newspaper, it was a lot cheaper.
Yeah, it was.
And if we go down a little bit more on the page, we'll
Yep.
see the debt service. We budgeted $396,000, we spent $386,000. Most of the debt service is right on budget because we know what the principal and interest on the outstanding bonds is, but short-term interest on other stuff, the timing is generally...
And we buffer that a little.
We buffer a little,
Yeah.
yeah. So we come out. So again, we're in good shape with the spending here. Next slide is the capital expenditures, which is all the projects. It's a bit of an eye chart. The good news is it's an eye chart because we have so many projects out there. There are 24 active projects in the system right now, and you can see the top half of the page where all the spending is. That's really all the prior year projects. And some of them are probably complete by now. Some of them are very close in spending. They're all underspent, but the bottom 11 projects are the new ones that were put into the system after annual town meeting because they're all approved, so I included them here. And you can see that we've actually started spending a little bit of money on those projects, so we're getting underway. And what you've got is the budget, the life-to-date expenditure for these projects, because some of them carry over from one year to the next. The encumbrances are just money that we've spent, but we haven't actually cut a check for it yet. And then it tells us the available budget and the percentage. So these are things we review at our meetings all the time, just to keep track of the spending.
And we have an unprecedented number this year as well, as far as applications go, so the CPC will have to make some decisions.
And then this is just kind of a summary of expenditures, including the ones approved at the annual town meeting in May. We've had a total of 60 projects come through here and go to town meeting and get approval. 9 of them were canceled. 21 we've got listed as completed and 30 in progress. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy that versus the 24 I just said. I don't know what the 6 projects were, but they're in one of the buckets. And this just kind of gives us the completed projects. At the end of 2022 was 3.8 million. And this one actually surprised me a little, Mark. I don't know if it's as much of a surprise to you. We didn't spend a whole lot of money on these projects in
Last year?
23. Yeah.
No, I mean,
only
a lot of them weren't
$78,000.
huge asks, so we had a couple of big hits. We had the playground, that was a nearly $1 million project.
But money was spent in 2022, not in 2023.
Right, no, that's a good point.
That's what I'm saying. It kind of fell into 2022. So we saw that there's $7 million, but only $78,000 additional in 2023.
Which is a little misleading, but yes.
Yeah, that's just a timing issue, but it allows us to keep track of spending in line with the way the town does their reporting on a monthly and annual basis, fiscal basis. So that's all. I mean, the good news, it's still well over $7 million. And then there's a breakdown showing that there's 22 projects of historical preservation, 8 in open space, 18 in recreation, 3 in housing. And again, the same $7.5 million.
Really historical takes the brunt of it, or has to date historically, with recreation a pretty close second. However,
Recreation's first.
well, as far as dollars go, but I'm just looking at sheer numbers.
In terms of, number of projects, good point.
But you're right, recreation, we've spent more money in it, but I think it benefits the town as a whole much more intensely, so it makes sense.
That was pretty much it. The rest of the schedules is really just the detail that supports all those schedules, so.
All right. Stop sharing. Thank you, Michael. I think Dwight's got some background noise. Yep, I see Rich, you joined us. Hello, good evening. We're just sort of mid-row here. At this point, I'd like to go to the different committees and see if anybody has any brief updates from the organizations that they represent. Because I'm looking at her, I'm gonna ask Clarice to lead us off with recreation.
Okay. I talked to Matt actually last week, and he gave me an update of what's been going on, and I'll start with Glen Echo. Both picnic tables were put in, and that project is now complete.
Excellent.
The Glen Echo active rec parcel, he's working on some quotes to design a pickleball and frisbee golf on the active rec parcel, and should have the CPC application in by the end of the month. The design phase of the Dennison complex, he's met with the design team several times, and also with members from various youth sports groups, and he'll hopefully have a application in as far as the construction goes by the end of the month. The baseball lights, I believe he just said they were going well, and they've been in contact with Barry on it.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and Youth LAX, and they're working with the design team as we speak. And I think the only one left is the Halloran, which the multi-sportplex and the engineering department is finished, and they're working on the project, and it's going to the planning board. And
Excellent.
that's it.
Thank you,
You're
Louise.
welcome.
Rich, you had put your hand up. Did you want to make a comment, or?
In regards to an update on the Caper project, I'd be more than happy to give you an update right now.
Let's hang on to that for just a moment. We actually have a section on our regular meeting for that, Rich.
Okay.
I know you're a representative of the planning board, and I know that you don't generally bring projects to us, but if you had an update from the planning board, I'd certainly take it.
No update from the planning board.
Thank you, Rich. John, you want to pick up next?
Sure. So just for everybody, if you're not familiar, I'm chair of the Stoughton Open Space Committee, and our work is really focused on acquisition and or protection of natural spaces in Stoughton. And our latest one is the Benson Road property, 12 acres, which we're making progress toward acquisition of. We've had a 21E performed on it, and we're now looking to get an, I guess it's called an A&R.
Yes.
To go before the planning board, which, so that we can bring this to fruition. We'll still have another step before that, where we will also, well, it can be after it, identify somebody to accept a conservation easement on the property. But it abuts other town-owned properties, other conservation properties, and we hope to bring that to fruition in the next several months and turn it over to the Conservation Commission. But in the meantime, this property came to us vis-a-vis an ad we took out in the newspaper for proposals for the CPC, for things people wanted to get done. And this homeowner came to us with a desire to protect this property. And so I would encourage others in town, if you've got parcels that you want to protect, whether it be through sale or putting a conservation easement on it or other ideas, we're happy to hear it and happy to work with you on them. And I think that's about it.
Thank you, John.
One last
Yep.
thing. Barry reminded me that we will soon have another open space and recreation plan for the state that we have to do. This is a painful, long process. I thought I wouldn't be around by the time we have to do it again. They've extended it to every 7 years now, but I guess we've got to start thinking about heading down that road, and I'll probably be back to my fellow committee members seeking some funding for that. But I think it's due in 2025, 2024, 2024, I think. 2018, do the math. Anyhow, that's about it for me. Thank you.
25, yeah. If it was 18, it's 25 if it's 7 years. Thank you, John. Being a representative of the Redevelopment Authority, I don't generally bring applications forward either. However, the Redevelopment Authority, in conjunction with the work we're doing with the Urban Renewal Plan, intend next year on bringing at least one article to help provide some more open space for our downtown center, beautify it some, green it, which I think our center certainly needs. So that's something we'll be looking at for next year. John Morton, I noticed you joined us, and welcome. Do you have an update from the Conservation Commission you'd like to share at this time, or? And you're muted, John, so.
You're muted, John.
Yeah, he knows. Just trying to figure out how to
Maybe you
unmute
should
it.
come back to him.
Yeah, I can come back to you, John, if you'd like. Yeah. Dwight, I'm gonna move on to you from historic.
Well, the Historic Commission, first of all, consists of Bert Duran, David Lambert, Janet Weinstein, Chris Milday, and a new member, Jennifer Sears. Our day in, day out, or month in, month out, tasks usually involve having to okay demolition of houses, some of which have no historic value, some of which our job is to get people that are requesting demo permits to supply title searches to go back to the building of the house. And that's more of a challenge than you might think, because the title searches that are usually done for the purchase don't go back nearly as what we would like to learn about the history of the house. That said, we eventually always okay the demo, except the lumber house, but sometimes it takes a while, and we're trying to get the speed up. In the past year, we had the consultant's report come through on the barn, and then through the grace of the CPC, we're encouraged to then take this new proposal we're putting in this year, follow up on the consultant's report, and ask for $200 and some odd thousand to follow up on their recommendations and update the barn and put in support and cut trim around it, whatever. And I appreciate the fact, Mark, that you have stepped up and are willing to look for uses, agricultural purposes, whatever, and having you take on that part of it is helpful to us, because it's kind of in your ballpark right now. The other part, historical signs. I mean, one of the things in the past we've done is put out the 20 historical signs that are over town and are very popular. So we decided to apply for another 15 at various places that are mentioned in the article. And it's going to take a fair amount of effort, but it's usually with the expenditure of a small amount of money, you can put out things that are there for people to appreciate for a long time and help people get back in touch with their history. So, the Historical Commission is moving forward, and we thank the CPC for all the support they've given us over the years.
And Dwight, if my memory serves me, the last time you had asked us for money and received it, I don't recall, I thought you didn't spend a lot of it. I thought you got some donations out of that, didn't you?
Well, back when we did historic, the house, putting the plaques on the houses.
Yeah.
We did get quite a few donations of $50 a piece for people to pay for their own sign, and that did not have to be paid for by CPC.
Right.
That was about a decade ago, but you're right, that did happen.
Yeah, that was good to have happen. So I think this is probably going to be a small but worthwhile investment. And thank you for bringing that forward.
And the last thing we should say, that through the research done by either the Historical Commission or the Historical Society, we have now determined that the land that John Morton lives on was probably at one time owned by a Benjamin Lynn, who was a judge, district judge who lived in Salem and bought that piece of land with the cedars that were on it. He was a circuit judge and rode around on horseback and came from Salem and visited here. So John, somewhere in your lineage before the owner you know, I believe John Lynn, Bernard Lynn owned part of your land. So glad you know.
Well, that's good to know, thank you.
It sounds like you got unmuted, John. So if Dwight, you're finished, you go right ahead, John, and give us a conservation update.
Thanks. Well, first of all, our house was built in 1768, and it has a plaque on it, and we did pay for that plaque. And we thank you for the thought. It was excellent. I'm the representative of the Conservation Commission on the CPC. As you probably know, under the statute, the Conservation Commission, among others, are required to be members of the CPC, and the Conservation Commission appoints one of its members, or at least a delegate, to be part of the CPC. The Conservation Commission has been working with the Historical Commission, Dwight and his group, to figure out what to do with the barn and some of the land adjacent to the barn. I would point out that the property that the barn sits on was acquired at the same time that the land behind it was acquired by the town, but they were acquired differently. The land was acquired under the control, management of the Conservation Commission. The barn was controlled under the control and direction of the Board of Selectmen. And the reason was that we didn't know if at the time, whether the barn would be used for conservation purposes. And so the town wanted the right to sell the barn or sell the property or otherwise dispose of it or utilize it for non-conservation purposes if a conservation purpose couldn't be determined. So the Conservation Commission, working with the Board of Selectmen and the Historical Commission, has agreed that it would be a very good use of the conservation land adjacent to the barn if it were allowed to be used for agricultural purposes, which was, of course, its original use. Now, under the conservation law, the conservation land can be used for agricultural purposes. And the Conservation Commission is consulting with Town Council. The Town Council has opined that the land could not be leased under the law to an outside farming group, but it could be licensed for the use. There's a subtle difference, but the impact is about the same in that what could be done on that property would be some kind of public use farming activity. What the public use would be decided by negotiation between the Conservation Commission, the Board of Selectmen, and the town. But some ideas were community gardens, some ideas were public access to the farm to view animals or to an educational purpose where you could have teaching sessions, or it could be a pick your own, harvest your own type of group. There's a lot of ways that you could have public access to a farming activity and maintain its use for farming. And in connection with that, it might be advisable to allow the farming group, if there is one who finally adopts the plan, to use the barn. And the barn could have a lot of uses that would have a public use, such as a museum or even perhaps use in connection with the farming activity itself. So the Conservation Commission is working with the Board of Selectmen and the Historic, and will be contacting the farmers associations in the area to see what ideas we can come up with to give that land some use and some public access. In addition, we've been working with the CPC and with others on the trail maintenance and of course, the improvements at Glen Echo, which I hope people have gone out and seen and enjoyed, and in fact, the acquisition of Glen Echo itself. So there's been an awful lot of things that we've been working on. Another thing that we've been doing with CPC assistance is creating a parking area and a trailhead for the conservation land that was donated to the town. It was previously known as Cedar Swamp, but that's a little bit of a misstatement because there's some very nice uplands in that area and some existing trails that are very beautiful but hard to access. And so what the town has agreed to do is well, first of all, the CPC and the Conservation Commission acquired a 4 or 5 acre parcel of land that will be used as a parking area, access area, and trailhead for the trails that will connect through not just the new conservation donated land at 90 acres, but another 80 acres of existing conservation land behind this donated land. So what the whole idea is to improve the trail system, improve access to the trail system, and see if there's a way to protect the agricultural heritage of the town by allowing some of the land to be used for agricultural purposes, so long as that agricultural purpose has a public access component. So I think the Conservation Commission has been pretty active, and again, with the help of the CPC, we've got a lot to show for what we've been doing.
Absolutely. Dwight?
Well, I would add that they've also just put in new bridges and boardwalks at Bird Street Conservation Area. Beautiful new boardwalk where what I call the Boy Scout bridges used to be, and very useful crossings at two major places where the trails were flooded out. That work has now been completed or close to completed, and that is a great benefit to those of us who walk on those trails. Two, I wanted to ask John to clarify when you said that agriculture could be licensed but not leased. Can you say something about that?
Yes. Yeah, I think that the question of a lease is very binding. A license has more flexibility, and I believe that it's not permitted, according to town council, to lease conservation land. But there's some reason you can license it, which a license basically does not give an interest in the land. It is a right to use the land as opposed to an interest in the land itself, which a leasehold is an interest in land. A license is the right to use land. And there's a subtle difference, but I think the end result will be the same, because the question is, when you expect the farmer to come in and use land, you can't say, and we can tell you we're going to terminate on a moment's notice, because there's a great deal of capital cost to come in and begin a farming operation. And so they have to have some sense that there'll be a continuity over time in order for them to make the investment in starting a farming operation. A license for a term of years, which would be renewable if certain criteria are met. And so it's a negotiation, and the negotiation has the problem of their return on their initial investment and giving the town enough assurance that they're going to do what they're going to do so long as the license is in effect.
But in terms of fees, a lease might entail a fee, but a license could not. Is that fair to say?
No, a license can entail a fee as well. And again, that's negotiable. It could be a part of earnings, or it could be a flat rate. Again, it has to make commercial sense to the farmer, or he won't do it. And it has to make sense to the Conservation Commission, because, there's some risk when you get a farm operation on a piece of land, and I think there would be damage to the land in the long run. And so both sides have to be cautious, but that shouldn't stop us from doing something good and constructive on the land.
Well, thank you for exploring that as far as that.
Yeah, it also gives the town a separation, a degree of separation, if you will. I know that the lands that we license to many of our recreational institutions here, the baseball, lacrosse, they're all licenses, and that allows separation for the town, Dwight. So I think you did a very good job of explaining that, John, and thank you. If there's nothing else from the Conservation Commission, I want to take a moment to explain to the public, we also have two members that are appointed to the CPC by the Select Board, one of which is our Treasurer, Michael Barrett, but the other is Olabumni Alotu. And Olabumni, I just wanted to give you a moment. If you had anything you'd like to say, you're welcome to do so. From my personal experience, it's always a pleasure to have you here, and I know you were just appointed again this year, so it's wonderful to have you back, and if you had anything you wanted to add, please do.
Thank you for having me. It's been great being on this committee, and I hope to I think I spent the first 3 years just trying to familiarize myself with the committee, and I hope that going forward, I'll be able to participate a lot more and make more contributions. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and we look forward to it. So, last but not least, Dawn Brady from the Housing Authority. Dawn, I know you have a couple of big projects this year. Do you want to have any update for us?
Yeah, I have two to speak about, which is two more than usual.
Yes.
I also want to just let the members know that I've been fighting off a bad cold, so if my presentation here sounds kind of rough, it's no reflection on the project.
No worries.
There's Father Bill's in Mainstream, which is, I know that the CPC is going a bit more into the nuts and bolts, but I just got here a summary based on some of the information the organization provided to us. They purchased the Stoughton Motel in Washington Street. They purchased it in June of '23. And I didn't realize this, but they operated more than 700 supportive housing units, already prior to this. Now, the Stoughton Motel will give them about 12,000 square feet of usable building space, and they have no intention of modifying the existing footprint of the building. So they're going to leave the outside, footprint in the same space. They intend a conversion of 24 studio apartments with bedrooms, bathrooms, and kitchenette, an upgrade of electrical, plumbing, safety systems, and a connection to public water and sewer. And Father Bill's will offer 24-hour staffing coverage, supportive services, and property management. Now, like I said, I'm sure at some point we'll be getting into more of the nuts and bolts, but I just wanted to provide kind of that summary of what's going on.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. Go on.
And then there's Hebrew Senior Life, which this is an organization which is the largest nonprofit provider of senior health care and living communities, in New England. And I believe they've already submitted a pre-application to CPC.
Yes, they have. Yep.
A preliminary meeting about that. The intention is to develop 210 units of supportive senior housing on a approximately 25-acre site in the Canton, Simpson Street areas, and it will be done in 2 phases. The units are 1 bedroom, 225 average square feet. Also, to point out, they're anticipating in the area 300 from this project, 300 construction jobs resulting, and then the ongoing employment once the projects are up and running. Besides, the quality of, how these projects sound, the other thing I just want to mention is this helps Stoughton add to the, the chapter, 41B of requirement for 10% of, affordable housing in the community. And, I think that's kind of important for us to have that inventory. And like I said, I'm glad for once that I have 2 things to talk about after, going like the Patriots have the last couple of games.
Well, you're absolutely right, and we do have pre-applications for both of those projects, Dawn. We heard Hebrew Senior Life last month as a pre-application, and we're actually hearing Mainspring tonight as a pre-application. So thank you for those. And one other just point of correction, you had mentioned earlier that the units at Hebrew Senior are 225 square feet. They're actually
That's what it said in their initial.
Yeah, it's 625. Yeah, they're 625, but yeah, but no, I figured it was just a verbal typo. So thank you, Dawn, for that update. That is it for updates tonight. I think I would like to open this up to any public comments that anybody may have. I'll take a moment now if there's anybody from the public who would like to make a comment. Hearing nothing, I'd like to close the public hearing. So do I have a motion to close the public hearing and move on
Move to
through this?
adjourn.
From the public
Public.
hearing, yes.
Public hearing.
Yeah, we're gonna close the public hearing technically. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
And Larry seconded it. So by roll call, Dwight,
Yes?
Don,
Yes.
Rich? You're muted, but I saw the nod.
The bottom of the screen.
Thank you. Yeah, he's got it. John Morton,
Yes,
Ola Bumney,
yes.
Yes.
John Lenahan,
Yes.
Larice?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So that closes our public hearing. We move on to our regular meeting now, and I would like a motion to open our regular meeting.
So moved.
Okay, I'm gonna take Dwight's as a second and Larice's as the motion.
We never closed it. We've got we have public hearing inside.
We opened the public hearing. Did we actually open my meeting? Oh, I did,
Yes,
didn't
we
I?
did,
Oh,
yes.
then I don't have to do this again.
Yes.
Sorry about that. I have nothing from the chairman tonight. Admin report, Barry?
No, nothing tonight.
Okay, wonderful. So we're gonna move right into new business. First item is a pre-application for the West Street barn renovation. Dwight, you wanna give us a very brief update on that?
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We've
Yep.
discussed it here in the past. I thank Barry for basically helping us put that together. It's basically following up on the recommendations made by the consultants and on the advice of CPC, applying for the money to follow up from our consultants. So that's,
Okay,
that was a lot. So I don't want to, I want to move things fast, so I think it's self-explanatory, but I can answer any questions.
no problem. I'm gonna ask Barry to give us a brief breakdown of this. First of all, does this meet the requirements of the CPA, Barry?
Yes, it does.
It does. And the cost that we'll be looking at, do we have a cost figure tonight?
We have an estimated cost. I think Dwight mentioned it. Well, it's $230,000.
230,000. Okay, so with that said, I will open it up to members. Are there any questions from members? Hearing nothing online. Do I have a motion to accept the pre-application? This is not to accept the full application and recommend at this point. This is simply to get the full application.
So made.
Okay, Rich, do I have a second?
Second.
Michael?
Second.
We got a second from Michael Barrett. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none by roll call. Dwight?
Yes?
Don?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
John Morton?
Yes.
Ola Bumney?
Yes.
John Linehan? Larice?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. All right, so we'll expect a full application at our next meeting, I take it? Yep. Second piece is the historic signs. I know you gave us a lot of information already, Dwight. Before I let you roll with this, Barry, does this meet the requirements of the CPA?
It does, and just because there's a little bit of confusion, there's two separate things. There's historic home signs, which we referred to earlier. There's historic site signs. This is historic site signs.
This is historic site signs. Excellent, thank you. Dwight, you want to add anything at this point?
Well, they'll be placed at the sites that are mentioned in the application. That's not written in stone, but most of those places will have signs put at them, most of Stoughton cemeteries and other places that are listed. I've got an assurance from our previous vendor that that price can be matched more or less that we've used in the past. So that's why we was able to do it for approximately the price before, like $1,000 a sign, and DPW's been good about helping place the signs in there, so, again, something we've done before, we could say, service to the community.
I've got a little enough juice.
John Morton, your mic is open.
John? You know what?
Not anymore. Go ahead, Dwight, sorry about that.
So that, I just like people to approve the pre-application and we can move on.
Excellent. Anything from the members at this point on this item?
I just want to say the application amount is $17,000. Again, that's an estimate, it can change.
Yes, thank you, Barry. Hearing nothing from the members, do I have a motion to accept the pre-application?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Michael, you seconded it. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, by roll call. Dwight?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Rich? Terry?
Yes.
John? Morton?
Yes.
Olabumney?
Yes.
John Linehan?
Yes.
Larice?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. All right, so we'll expect a full application on that next month. The next item is a pre-application for Marks Field. Mike Tupin is the representative from Stolex. Mike is with us tonight. Why don't you come up and take a seat, Mike? Barry, do you want to go over some of the details on this real briefly? Firstly, does this meet the requirements of a CPA project?
I haven't seen the details, but what I know of it in principle does meet the requirements. of the
Okay,
CPA.
and it meets it under recreation, is that
Under
correct?
recreation, correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm going to turn it over to you, Mike.
Hi, it's good to be back. We started working with Activitas on the design for Marks Field renovations. I've met with them several times. I don't know how much detail to go into. They've done soil samples, they've come out and done measurements, and they've provided us with several options.
And you picked an option,
We did,
correct?
yes. We went,
yeah.
well, it was option 4 that we sent in.
Right.
We've since revised that a little bit for option 4, version 2. I sent that to Barry tonight. I just met with them Monday, so some of this information is fresh.
It's pre-application time,
Okay.
so we're
Right.
not, you know, it's quite all right.
So we've got, we have the site for the lacrosse field, and we have increased the parking. We have, that's 60 spots, then we have 3 handicap spots, we have handicap accessible bleachers. We have to move our existing building, so we're gonna take that down and move it, or build a new one. And that's what we got, so. I don't know what details you need on the cost options.
The
So,
details, yeah, I was gonna say that, I mean, the main thing with certain recreation projects is that if it's work that can be considered maintenance, that wouldn't be allowed. But given that the whole approach to this is you're taking a field that's abandoned, you're making it
Usable.
available to be used, making it usable.
Yeah.
I don't think we're likely to see anything that's a maintenance issue on the plan, but if we do, we'll point it out. But
The one thing I wanted just to clarify, it did say no paving, right? That was not an option.
Paving isn't, it can be an option, but it gets a little wonky with the paving. We prefer not to
They met
whenever
with
possible.
the town agency, and they recommended it for the drainage, but I just didn't know which way to go with that. So I have cost estimates for both paving
And
and,
that's something I think we can get into with the full
Yeah.
application.
Very good.
it's not
Okay.
that paving per se is prohibited.
Oh, okay.
It's just-
All right.
it's
Yeah,
maybe
and
for
I
a
think-
recreational purpose.
Barry can also work with
Okay.
you on
All right,
that,
thank you.
so.
And
This
can't be
tonight
maintenance.
is basically about, do we want to move forward and look for a full application?
Okay.
As a committee, something I can't do on my own, so.
okay, all right. Well, they provided us all sorts of options and
Okay.
puzzle pieces so we can.
I think
do that.
our suggestion to you is whittle it down. Get
Okay.
us one option
Yep.
that you're all happy with, both the town and
Okay.
your organization.
Great.
Any members have any questions at this point?
Yeah.
Yeah, John Linehan?
It's a big sum of money.
It is.
How many young people are currently in the program?
Last year, we had 86 boys and girls.
Anything else, John?
No, not now.
Okay, yep. Any other members of the committee have any questions at this time? Dwight, I saw your hand go up.
Oh, to echo John's concern about the money, it's just when we see this and then we see the Stoughton Youth Baseball next in line, there's a potentially large sums of money going out for between the two projects. And I think whether or not that's an appropriate pre-application, or by the time we finally approve final applications, I think some adding up money in the budget, and the amount of money we have to get open space, and to what extent we're spending it for $1 million here, $2 million there, as opposed to something else, would certainly be something I'll be weighing heavily.
Thank you for that, Dwight. John Morton?
Dwight just made the comments that I was going to make, but I would take it a step farther. I think that in the next meeting, we ought to have some kind of a financial statement that indicates how much money we have that we can allocate to projects. And so it's very clear that some of these, especially the housing projects, are going to require huge amounts of money. Some of those may end up being bonded. And we need to do a little fiscal planning here as a committee to make sure that it has many implications. One is assigning priorities to the kinds of things that we want to fund, as opposed to just allowing them to come through the door and taking them in order. And second, deciding whether we have cash or bonding power, and whether it's advisable to do a project in cash or bonding, especially in view of the fact that interest rates now are up in the 6 to 7%, whereas before they were in the 1 to 2% rate. And so I do think that with all of these projects coming at us, every one of which has merit, we have to look hard at the financial position we're in and come to some decisions with respect to priorities and with respect to how we would finance major projects, which includes bonding, and looking at that, what that would do to our cash flow going forward, because we don't have infinite funds. So I echo Dwight's comments and would say that we need to formalize the process of looking at our money and prioritizing projects.
So just so you know, John, this is a discussion that our treasurer, Michael Barrett, myself, and Barry Kassler, our program administrator, have already begun to have. This year, we currently have 7.8 million in applications, I believe, and we do not have that much funding, even with borrowing capacity available to us, John. So I agree that we now are in a position where we have to start looking thoughtfully at what it is we want to do. Tonight's purpose is whether or not we want to accept a pre-application on this, or we're going to say no tonight. It meets the statutory requirements for a recreation project, so I would like to see us get a full application. That gives the applicant an opportunity to, get any work done that we may deem necessary prior to us hearing the full application. But, we could certainly make recommendations, John. But this is to determine whether or not we want to move forward with a pre-application into a full application at this time.
Well, I completely agree. This is a pre-application, and if it meets the requirements, I think we have to say yes. But that doesn't mean that, but I'm going to continue to suggest that maybe at the next meeting, we have as an agenda item a review of our ability to finance these projects going forward.
Yes.
And the discussion of priorities.
And it's funny, I fell a little bit short on my own speech there, because I intended to say I think Mike will be prepared to do that for us at our next meeting, but I just simply forgot to say that. So thank you for reminding me. Michael, you think that's something you can put together for our next meeting?
No, as Mark said, we had a preliminary conversation when some of these projects started coming in, and said, okay, and really follow up from last year's town meeting when we went in and said, we got $1 million coming in the door and $3 million going out. And we're at a point where that just cannot continue forever, so.
Right.
Absolutely, John, we've got to get our arms around what the full amount available to us is and what it will be, but then line that up against the priorities of what we want to spend.
Right, so you'll have all that information
We
at the
will pull that
November
off.
1st.
It's one of the reasons
Yep.
we were hoping to have that CP2, because that kind of gives us a current starting point rather than a
Yeah.
year-old starting point.
So we will have the accurate
We will
information.
get into that at our
Yep.
next meeting in more detail.
Agreed, thank you,
I think it's
John.
actually beneficial that we have some of these projects on, even before we do that, because we kind of beginning to lay out the scope of what we can do.
Right,
And we know, it's now real. In the last few years, we've always known we were gonna run into a problem. That we didn't have unlimited funds and there are a lot of things we can do.
Yep.
But there are limitations and our priorities become very important now, so.
Well, I would add one thing, in doing that calculation, you have to allow for the fact that we are required to spend 10% at least in each of 3 categories. So the money is, just because it's in the bank, doesn't mean it's available for all purposes.
you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yep. Yes.
and we have some pretty conservative markers in place that won't allow us to overspend, John, so thank you for that reminder as well, but we're very much aware of that piece of it. Dwight, did you have a follow-up
Well,
question?
my sense is to move things along. My sense would be to approve pre-applications if they meet the criteria as soon as possible, but send a strong message that money is likely to be a big issue this year. And so the people making the applications, to the extent they pare them down some, it may improve their chances of, in my opinion, may improve their chances of having them approved.
The other thing I would add, by the way, is that they don't have to come to us for full funding. They can come to us for partial funding, and maybe if you understand what our financial limitations are, you can moderate your request for CPC contributions.
Thank you, John. Anybody else have any comments at this point? Do I have a motion to accept the pre-application?
So moved.
So moved with the qualifications I expressed.
Okay, so, and we have a second from Larice. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none by roll call. Dwight?
Yes?
Don? Brady?
Yes.
Rich? Terry?
Yes.
John Morton?
Yes.
Ola Bumney?
Yes.
John? Linehan? Larice?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So, Mike, you'll have a completed full application by the 24th
Yeah, I'll
of
work with you on
October.
Okay.
And Barry will be in touch, as will I likely, to go over some of the details.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And then when you get us that full application, we'll either schedule it in November or December, whichever, depends on how quickly it comes in.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
Thanks so much. What is this? All right. Next item is the pre-application for Stoughton Youth Baseball Fields. Steve, Arden, and Heather, I see you with me. Us. Just introduce yourselves for the records. Before you get started though, Barry, you've taken a look at this application. Does it meet the requirements of the CPA?
In principle, it does, but there may be some particular issues with certain components of it that don't.
And it meets it under recreation,
Under
correct? And what do we have for a pre-application total at this time?
Yeah. The pre-application total, the request is $4.2 million.
4.2, okay. Steve, Heather, floor is yours.
Yeah, so before we get going on it, I'm Steve Barden. Nice to meet everybody. I've been with the Stoughton Youth Baseball for 6 years. I'm an active member of the community. I have 3 kids in our program, and I've been coaching and I've been a member within the organization for the last 6 years. Flip it over to Heather.
Hi everyone, nice to see all of you again. Heather Trokey, also have 2 boys active in the Stoughton Youth Baseball program, as well as been a board member for the last few years. And so happy to be here this evening to talk through this pre-application process with you all.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, before we get going, just so everyone has a clear understanding, when we were writing the grant, we had the grant in mind for Elm Street and Drake Field. I'm hearing from the last gentleman, there is some items with the amounts of money, and then also from the contingency side. So if there's an opportunity, if we have to look at a certain number or having the number come down, there are a higher contingency in there that we did go with a 30% contingency. And then there's also 2 complexes that we're talking about. So it's Drake Field and Elm Street. So I know that number might seem big, but I think the reason why the justification is because it's just not one field. It's actually, it's the Elm Street complex, which consists of 7 ballparks, and then it's also the Drake Field, which is the larger one. When the children get older, they would play on. So that one, so it's 8 baseball fields that we are looking at. So I just want to make a little clarification. It's not one field, it's actually 8 fields, and it's I wouldn't use the word field, it's more of a complex, which I'm sure a lot of you have either been down, you've had kids, nieces and nephews, so, and if you're not aware of it, we're happy to walk through that. So I just want to make sure that everyone has a full understanding before we kind of go into what we're requesting. So what we're looking at is in our current condition at our Elm Street and Drake fields, these fields have been maintained by volunteers. We have an amazing, dedicated team of volunteers. And there's 30, 40, we have parents, we have kids, but the field needs an upgrade. It needs a legacy renovation done to it. The fences are falling apart. The kids that go on the field, the fences are falling apart. We got zip ties down there. We have Band-Aids. We're doing the most we can as volunteers. And it's just the fields have come to a point now where the fencing, everything's 40, 50 years old. There's issues with the plumbing. We have, the fields are not accessible. Our walkways are uneven. If you're, they're not ADA compliant. If a child wants to come down and they want to access some of the fields, there's not access for somebody who would need a wheelchair. So really what we wanted to do is we wanted to take a step back and holistically look at this. So we got in partnership with a general contractor and we put a full scope of work together on enhancing the ballpark. And really what that then means is all of the current fencing would come down and new fencing would come up. And again, the current fencing, it's rusted and there's a lot of safety issues. And it's a complete renovation on that. And then it's also looking at our current bathrooms. Again, there's issues with the plumbing, there's not ADA compliance, and there's restrictive issues for people trying to access certain play areas. So we were looking at that. And then in addition, really when you take a look at the kids and what we are requesting, it's really an investment in the youth. And when you think about, who the next firefighters, cops, and everything might be, it's really these kids. When you look at the pride that the high school brought to this community and how prideful they are to be a Stoughtonite, well, it starts at this elementary level. And that's what we're really trying to do with this grant. It's not only it's not to also give it a legacy in regards to a capital promise to the kids. It's really make those kids and invest in the youth for the next generation. And it's just not the baseball players. There's siblings that are down there. There's cheerleaders. It's aunts, uncles. We have had a great problem since COVID. We've had an increase in baseball. Kids are finally getting back out to the field. We were hovering pre-COVID 2020, 200 to 225 kids. Last year we saw record numbers. We went over 300. This year we're going to be anywhere between 350 to 400 kids conservatively. So this isn't just for baseball kids. Right now this is our first year. We have fall ball. We have kids down there that maybe they might not be the best at it, but we're getting them an opportunity to play before they even get down to the ball field, just to get them exposed.
What was it called? I'm sorry.
So we have a fall ball program, and it's getting the kids exposed to baseball before they even have the chance. And during the wintertime, Heather brought in an instructional where she brings the 4 and 5-year-olds. So it's just not even our older kids, it's our younger kids. So really what we are asking for is a complete renovation of it. I know it's a big number. If there's an opportunity, again, to look at the numbers, we're happy to do that. But this is just not some fencing. It's really to give this place some TLC. And then I want to make a little bit of thing too, because what I'm hearing too is, okay, we're going to invest in it. And what's the mindset of that? We're gonna have to come back and ask for more money. I can let you know right now, we finance all the maintenance. We take care of all these ballparks. We're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars annually down at those fields. We have an amazing volunteer group behind us, an army that Heather, she's the head of it, and she's got her loyal followers, and it's amazing what we've done. And we have an establishment in there, and we're committed to keeping that going. So the maintenance and everything after we do this, that's gonna still stay with how the relationship is, and we're gonna be on the hook, and we're gonna still maintain those fields. We're gonna bring the pride into the Elm Street and potentially Drake Field.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was awesome.
You're all set?
Yeah.
No? You sure?
Yeah, I think nothing more to add. The only thing I will say is that beyond the baseball piece is that, I'm really invested in the community. And so for me, fostering a community down there is so important. And so while obviously the priority is the baseball games that are happening down there, we also open it up to community partners. So for example, this year we partnered up with Stoughton football team, and they were hosting some spaghetti dinners down there. And we've had other folks reach out for fundraisers and such to be able to utilize the complex because it is such a large space. And so myself and the board are invested in providing these opportunities, and if we can do the upgrades to the bathrooms and things like that, we can provide further opportunities for other organizations to come down there and utilize the space beyond just baseball.
Now, one quick question I have, bit of an elephant in the room. Last year, we gave some money to put in lighting and school boards. Could you give us a sense of what happened there?
I can definitely speak to that.
Yeah.
So in full transparency, we were here last year. I was here. I was brand new to the board, had newly been voted in as the president of the board. There were some wonderful, well-meaning volunteers on the board previous to my tenure beginning, and all well-intentioned. But I think, in light of money increasing across the board, inflation and all of those things, and in light of, frankly, just maybe not fully understanding the process. I think what we realized is while the light project is phenomenal, and we would love to see that happen in this capacity with this new project, this legacy project that we're asking for, the truth is that the numbers that were asked for just simply weren't enough. There's some wetlands down there that weren't taken into consideration, and additional components of the project that unfortunately were not wholly looked at by the team. Again, well-meaning individuals, but unfortunately were not wholly looked at, and so unfortunately it's not a project that we could be able to move forward with given the amount that we were approved for.
And then another thing we've done is in 2023, I was the vice president of our board. I've taken a step back. What we did was to ensure that what we want to talk about today is how we're going to drive this thing forward. We've opened up a new position within our volunteer team, and I'm the head of the capital planning committee. So my focus is on this project, and I think the reason why that's important is when you look at the team that was put in place, again, good intentions, necessarily having experiences outside of when you have a volunteer team, you have to figure out what everyone is good in. In my personal life, I have 20 years of project management experience in major commercial real estate. I specialize in facilities and sourcing outside of my baseball life. In my personal life, this is how I make a living. So that's the skill that I'm going to bring to our volunteer team, is that my responsibilities are going to be overseeing this project, working collaboratively with the town, the architect, and then also the winner of whoever, if we move this forward, the GC. So the team is completely different, and that's how we're going to drive this project forward, and we're going to focus on that.
And just for the committee members' understanding, I purposefully brought that up because we recommended and got approval for
Last year?
Yes.
$145,000.
$145,000. When we wrote that article, we wrote it in such a specific manner that it was an all or nothing approach. Heather and then Steve came to us and said, look, we have some issues of some wetlands where we intended to put the lighting, so the lighting isn't going to be able to go where we wanted it to go. So rather than try and pigeonhole that 145, they came back to us and said, look, we can't spend any of that money. And I think it takes a lot of courage to recognize that whatever, it doesn't matter how it got unintentionally side railed, they had the courage to come and say, hey, this isn't gonna work, but we'd like to come back. Now, obviously, we have a very large application before us, but I wanted to give you some context as to, A, that 145 is gonna come back to us. Not that in an application this size, it's a huge deal, but it's important that you recognize that as a committee. That they were willing to say, hey, we understand this is a problem, and rather than try and fake something or squeeze it through, we wanted to do the responsible thing. So
Smart thing to do.
I think it was absolutely the smart thing to do. Yeah, it would have been crazy, and I think it was the right way to go, and I appreciate both of your efforts in doing that.
And Mark, if I may, just to, in terms of when we were considering, we did talk about as a board, should we just go back and ask more for the lights? But the truth is, as much as we love spending time with you all and the work that you're doing, we felt like we knew that the complexes need a lot of work. And so it felt like if we go in and we go under one fell swoop, hopefully you all won't have to see us for a very long time, at least in this capacity. And so we thought the legacy project really was the way to go. Excuse me.
All right, Dwight has his hand up. Why don't you give me a minute, John? Go ahead, Dwight. Questions from the committee.
Well, speaking only for myself, I appreciate the, what they did with last year returning the money, but $4 million in this year, and given the finances you've talked about, I have to say, in my opinion, that is a non-starter number for me. It just seems in the context of what we've said about our financial resources and lack thereof, that $4 million is just, I must admit, somewhat mind-blowing. I don't question the fact that there's that much work that needs to be done down there, but given the finances that we have right now, it's hard for me to conceive that we would okay that, in my opinion.
With hearing that, we can adjust the numbers, and I know the numbers, so I'm not going to just make a number up, but I can tell you right now, we can adjust the numbers and we can focus on the Elm Street project, and then if you remove contingency, we can move the number to 2 million.
So, just so you're aware, the good piece of...
I'm sorry, Drake, if we remove Drake, I apologize.
That's okay. The concept of the pre-application is, A, does this fit the requirements, which I think we can say at least partially it does, as Barry has stated. The second piece is to be able to hear from the committee members. So what you're hearing now is kind of what Barry, yourselves, and I'm happy to help Michael if necessary from the finance end. So we can come back with a full application, presuming we do get the vote to do that, to move forward with that, with something that the committee sees as more realistic, I think is the right way to say that. John Linehan, you had a question or comment.
Yeah, I, like Dwight, was a bit blown away by the number, and I don't know if it was naively put forth or put forth and we'll fall back to another number, but you've got a capital planning committee. Do you have a capital campaign committee? I'm surprised you guys don't have a capital campaign going within town, a series of events, opportunities for sponsorship. Coming to us with your hat in hand for the whole thing, I'm very frustrated by it, I have to admit. My kids all grew up playing there. I love that complex, but and played at the other field for years, but to think you would come to the town for the whole amount just blows me away. And partly it is, what frustrates me is the lesson it's teaching to the kids. That we'll just go get somebody to give us this money rather than working for it a little bit. I think all the kids should be involved in fundraising for it.
I can speak to that a little bit. So the maintenance cost outside of what the volunteers do, which save the baseball fields a significant amount of money, we're looking at about $30,000 to $40,000 a year. So the fundraising that we do pretty much from membership costs to fundraising that we do, does take care of the maintenance costs and things down there, as well as, you know, running the snack shack and things of that nature. So do we have it?
Running the snack shack always drove a profit, isn't it?
It does a little bit, but not with the price of inflation right now. You're not going to sell $6 hot dogs down there when they cost us $3. You know, I mean,
You're talking to the wrong guy. When you have a capital campaign, you just don't go to one source for all the funding. I'm very frustrated by this approach.
Can I speak to that?
Yeah, let's keep it brief though.
We can keep it brief. So we partnered with a general contractor and we went through the fields. We went through everything. So again, if we made it too big in regards to having all the fields, I'm hearing that. And if we are selected from a pre-application standpoint, I can tell you we will spend the time, we will take a look at it, and we will adjust the numbers.
Okay. Well, I for one will be looking for what you're bringing to the table above and beyond maintenance, because we, you know, running a nonprofit, we have to do maintenance, but when it comes to a capital improvement, there's an extra something that goes into that. And you're talking about a legacy project, which should be reflected in the effort that goes forth into it beyond capital planning into capital campaign.
Okay, I'm hearing that. Thank you.
I'll sit John. John Martin.
Just a little more on that. I do think the pre-app is more than simply saying to the applicant, your project fits the CPC required criteria.
Agreed.
I would agree with Dwight and John that there is, I mean, I can't see a way where I would vote to approve a $4 million grant for this kind of a project because of many reasons, one of which is we simply don't have the money. But even if we had the money, I do think that, you know, I sit on a lot of not-for-profit boards. I know what fundraising is. I know it, first of all, it's not easy. And second, that there's no single source that wants to be the single source. They all want to know who's with them on this. And so I would say it would be fair to the applicant to say we would be looking not just for an adjustment, but a very substantial adjustment. I mean, we shouldn't be talking about $1 million here. We should be talking about maybe hundreds of thousands. I would also say that it's our obligation, given the information we now have, to rescind the 140,000 so that we know the money is available for the use. And if you wanted to come back with a new application for what we originally thought would be 145,000, that might be a more realistic way to approach this. But I would also think that it's going to be very difficult for this committee, once we get the financial report that I think we're going to get next meeting, for us to even imagine millions of dollars of project for recreation. One other thing, if we have a total of $7 million, this is a very rough cut. Know that 10% of that has to be for historic preservation. 10% of 7 million is 700,000. We know that 10% has to be for conservation. That's another 700,000, and then 700,000 for the third category. So, you know, right away there's smaller amount of funds to be used, and again we have to say no and prioritize, not just take applications as they come to us. So my sons also went through the baseball program at Stoughton and loved it, and I think it has tremendous merit, but we are constrained by our finances and by our obligation to treat taxpayers' money with great care and to allocate it into 3 different categories. And I think we have to be very cautious in these kinds of applications.
Thank you, John. Are there any other members that have any comments at this point?
Yeah, I feel like
Michael?
what we're hearing and what you're hearing from us as well is we need to look at the big picture. And the big picture may be that we have $4 million worth of work, but what are the priorities? How can we get it done? How can we get funds from other places to help? And the CPC can certainly, I think, contribute to it. I mean, that fits right in with what we want. Maybe not that much money, but even a long-term plan.
Well, why don't we do this? So what I'm hearing is to help fiscally, and instead of looking at it as a 1-year plan, we could draw it up as a 3-year plan. I could have it broken down by field, cost per field, and show a plan, and have it over a 3-year plan and how we could go about it.
With some of the other markers, I think that.
Yeah, but also keep it $4 million over 3 years is still more than we can probably afford.
And what we'll do is we will scale back.
Let's really get it, and bring in some of the stuff you're talking about in terms of the volunteers and the money that your organization has spent.
And I can scale it back with.
Add in layers like what John Linehan is talking about.
I-
And I think even John Morton, for years, one of our preferences has been when people come in, if we're supplementing something else, that's gonna be our priority because we're getting a bigger bang for our buck by doing that.
Right, because what we can do is we had walkways, we had other air things. I can scale that all back and I can focus what we would say is the fencing is the big value down at that field. And we can get the numbers under. I can guarantee you that. I can commit to that.
Okay.
If we were lucky enough to be pre-approved, I can guarantee you on the next application we would have it all adjusted.
Mark,
Please, John.
the one thing that disturbed me when I was looking at your pre-app was the identification of dangerous conditions.
Yeah.
And if you're operating in dangerous conditions, you just open yourself up to a lot of liability because you're knowingly operating in dangerous conditions. When you talk about prioritization, that's where you gotta prioritize.
Okay.
Fair. Any other members have, please, Luis?
Yes, I just had wanted to say that I spoke with Matt Gashon today about this, and he had no idea that you were putting in this application. He wish he had, because he would have given you some tips.
So perhaps you're
Is it my-
suggesting that.
Yeah, no, I
that-
think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that they speak with Matt as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because he's the recreation director,
Yep.
and he had no idea this was going to be presented.
That's very good advice, thank
Yeah.
you.
He's also been pretty successful with us.
Right, right.
Yeah, Matt has
Well,
been pretty successful
He was
with
very
us.
surprised
I
at
think
the
we-
amount, and he would have told you probably, if you had contacted him in the first place, he probably would have told you, you gotta scale this down. Okay, just to let you know.
So, yeah, Lou, I think that's a great thing. Do you, through Barry, you can get Matt Cashon's contact info, and that will be certainly helpful.
Right, right.
For a full application moving forward.
I
Any
think
other?
From our perspective as a
Please.
committee, we're gonna want to see how this fits in against what the town is doing in other fields, what Stoughton Youth Lacrosse and
Right.
against all of our priorities, as
Right.
John has mentioned in the other categories, but even within recreation. So everybody working together is gonna get us a lot further.
Right.
Thank you, Mike.
Because the bottom line is this is a town-owned field.
Yeah,
So-
these are town-owned
They're
fields.
town-owned
Yes.
complex, both of them. So any improvements that you make are basically, they ultimately belong to the town. So it, as was said, this has to fit in
Right.
to the town's recreational long-term plans.
Okay. Anything further from any of the members before we look for a motion? Dwight?
Well, this is the motion. I move with a huge asterisk, which contains all the qualifications that we have made, and they're big ones, and they're really serious ones, but I move to approve the pre-application with those caveats.
Okay. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
A second, yep. Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none by roll call. Dwight?
Yes.
Don?
Yes, with the caveat.
Yep, the caveat's been made. Rich? Terry?
Yes.
John Morton?
Yes.
John Linehan? Larice?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we have our work cut out for us.
Thank you,
ladies
and we're committed
gentlemen.
to that, not a problem, thank you.
And
Thank you,
I'm
and-
available to work with you, and we'll talk about how we can adjust this. I mean, this is the pre-application. It's one good reason why we changed to go to a pre-application. We used to just take
So you can hear
one
this now.
application off the bat,
Yeah.
and that was what you were stuck with pretty much. This gives us a chance to.
This is very helpful to us as a committee, to A, have a better sight of where you're going, but also for us to give you insight to what we can do.
Right.
Yeah.
And we appreciate it, thank you.
And I think I hear that messaging loud and clear. I don't ever want the message to be that we're not invested and that we're just asking for the handout. And I can see, thank you for bringing that to light, I can see that perspective. I think the angle that I was really coming from is, wow, look how supportive our town is with these funds. But there's no bigger advocate than I am for kids in general and making sure that they earn their keep in terms of how they're getting these things. So I just want to make that very clear, but I do appreciate you bringing that to light because that is important and I can see how that perspective could be viewed.
So John-
so thank you for saying that.
Yeah, he's our resident
Yeah, no, I genuinely
fundraising
appreciate
gentleman
it.
because he runs the zoos and he
Yeah.
does that literally on
Yeah.
a shoestring.
Yeah, no, it's
So John sort of has a, hey, if I can get this done, you
Yeah.
can get it done.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a, yeah, I
Absolutely.
don't want to hear it.
no, we do break even in this for what it's worth.
And understandably so. So thank you.
Thank you, thank
We
you.
look forward, the full application is due on the 24th, but we don't have to schedule this for November 1st. If we need a little extra time to work some of the details, I'll
We can
work
make
with
that date.
Barry and
We will
we'll
make
work
that
it
date,
out.
we will make that date.
Wonderful, thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time.
All right, new business item 12, pre-application for the Stoughton Motel conversion. Father Bill / Mainspring. John, Emily, others? Come on up, grab a seat. There's a couple down here. If you need them, please introduce yourself for the record. And before you do so, Barry, can you tell us if this is an application that meets the requirements of the CPA?
Yes, I believe it does. This is for housing.
That's right. Yep.
And this is to assist you in providing housing to people who qualify.
Yes.
Based on their income.
Yes.
And the application amount is, am I right, $250?
$250.
Am I correct in that?
Yes, $250.
Thank you. Please, for the record.
Thank you. John Yazwinski, I'm the CEO and president of Father Bill's in Mainspring.
Emily Rothschild, I'm the development consultant on the project, and I work for NeighborWorks Housing Solutions.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank
Floor
you.
is yours.
Thank you, Mark. I want to thank everybody for having us tonight. I want to thank everybody. As many of you may know, we've been in the Stoughton community for a long time. We've had a family shelter here at 94 Prospect Street since the early 2000s. So many of the community has been supporting our project there, and of course we've been providing rental housing scattered throughout the community for years. Just real quickly, if you don't know about Father Bill's in Mainspring, a lot of people know about us as we provide emergency shelter, of course, for families and individuals across Southern Mass. But we also, and I want to thank Dawn for speaking a little bit about this project. And our background is we also provide not just family shelter and individual shelter for families and individuals across Southern Mass, but we also have over 700 units of permanent supportive housing, just similar to what we're proposing tonight to the group. So, with that, Father Bill's in Mainspring has recently developed many projects in other local communities, and we've used CPA money. We've used CPA money in the town of Wareham, recently in a housing project in Randolph, and in Hingham, of all the communities. Of course, like Quincy, Brockton, and Weymouth, we've used other entitlement housing resources like trust fund money and home funds. What we're proposing tonight is we have acquired, as you've read, the Stoughton Motel. We're looking to do a housing conversion to the motel and create 24 rental subsidized apartments, efficiency apartments. We recently did this hotel to housing conversion in Brockton at the Roadway Inn, right on Belmont Street on the border of Stoughton, right on 24, if you're going towards the VA, right on the left. We renovated that place, 69 units of permanent supportive housing, and if anybody would ever want to come and take a tour, absolutely open to that. So we're looking to do the same model here. The population would be our poorest neighbors, 0 to 30% median income homeless individuals. This is permanent supportive housing. Everybody will have a lease. Everybody will pay 30% of their income towards the rent. As we know, we provide supportive housing, so it will be managed. We are both the owner, the developer, and the service provider. We do this for the majority of all of our projects. Of the 700 plus units that we do across Southern Mass now, we have, in a sense, of a 93% retention rate of people staying housed over 3 years. And we're very proud of that also. We're not an absentee landlord. We stay in the community. We want to be part of the community. We're already part of the Stoughton community. We look at this as a great opportunity. This project, of course, would also add to your housing inventory of affordable housing.
In full, correct?
In full, yep. Yep, 24 units. You know, as we said, we're requesting $250,000 to go towards this. The total project cost right now is looking at about $11 million. So asking for 250, we're going to be leveraging a lot of other resources.
Pursuant to our prior discussion.
We have already, the state is already invested in this project. The state has helped us with the acquisition costs. They've already committed some of the ARPA money. So we've already got about 2.5 million to go towards it, helped us with the acquisition of it, and we've already now in the round of funding to get it funded this upcoming year with the state. We have a strong track record with them, especially with a hotel to housing record there. So again, you know, we're also looking at not changing the footprint. You know, keeping, there's three buildings here, keeping them. We're not trying to move anything there. We are also bringing a lot of things up to code, major renovations, landscaping. What's that?
I can imagine.
Yeah, all of that stuff. And it will provide also, you know, we know the Stoughton Motel was well run. The owners, we got to know them, of course, not the whole experience, but just looked at it. The property's in great condition. At the same time, it was a transient crowd probably. We're here, this is providing stability. These people will be our neighbors. We're, you know, from our region, from our community, and they'll bring stability to the neighborhood in the sense of people, and this will be their home. So, yeah, overall, again, I think it's a win-win on the planning side. We're a local organization. We've got a track record with this community and other communities around us. And we're excited about potentially building some more needed affordable housing for our poorest neighbors.
Thank you, John. So Father Bill was the pastor of St. John the Baptist parish in Quincy, which is where, when I came here, I went to Mass. So this is a very different program than it was when Father Bill was putting homeless people in the rectory, which is exactly what he did. And he separated the females by using the nunnery that was on the property at the time. So this has clearly come a long way from what it once was, but certainly Father Bill's intent was a good one. I commend you for continuing that legacy that he created. Couple of quick things that I have. You had mentioned the neighbors. Are you getting a sense from the neighbors? Do you have, one of the things we look for are recommendation letters from from the neighborhood? How does this fit into the current neighborhood? That's something for a full application, presuming we move forward, that I'd like you to consider.
Sure.
I'll open it up to members at this point. John, you had your hand up. Do you have a comment or question?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman, thank you. In contrast to my comments on the last pre-application, I think this one is extraordinarily meritorious. And if we're talking about $250,000 against the $11 million project, which will provide much needed housing in Stoughton, it is something that I look at with great favor. I would say that the devil is in the details, and of course in a full application we would have to address all of those details. But I commend the applicant for the project and for bringing it to us. and look forward to seeing the full application.
Thank you, John. Any other members? John Linehan?
I would just say, I feel like this is the kind of project we've been waiting for a long time. I agree with what John said, very meritorious.
I agree.
You guys are providing, and just to be clear, supportive housing is for the formerly homeless. My only question, and it's not a big one, I'm sure you've covered it, is how well that area is served by public transportation. That might be a little challenging, but.
It is. There is none.
Does a bat bus go through there?
No.
It doesn't, you know, and we've been talking about it with the planning board, actually. It came up in our meetings there too. Part of the supportive housing is our case managers, our staff there, support the people, get them to the appointments they need to get to. So it's all about teaching life skills and getting them back in.
I was figuring you guys had it covered.
Yeah, so just real quickly, many people always bring it up, you know, we're in so many parts of Weymouth that don't have public transportation. We're in Wareham, we're in Plymouth, you know, we're in Hingham, there's no public transportation. And the people, it's never a barrier for people to, you know, be a part of that community. So yes, we know that's why it's supportive housing. We know public transportation is an issue, not just in Massachusetts, all over the country, in suburban and rural areas. But it's not a deal breaker for the people we assist. We see a lot of support that helps in that area.
I'll just say, as the chairman of the Open Space Committee, I'm also thrilled that this is an existing building. You're not,
You're not
mowing down a whole bunch of woods, and I appreciate that very much. But I think this is a great project, and we've been waiting. This is perfect.
One thing I might suggest, if possible, is some examples of how you've handled the public transportation issue at other sites. It's definitely a sticky point for some of the townspeople. Certainly not a deal breaker from our perspective, but it might help you to help us understand how you generally tackle that sort of thing. That would be helpful from my perspective, at least. Any other members have any comments?
Absolutely agree with John and John that it sounds like a great project, and for us to be able to get that kind of leverage on an investment and it's in housing. Housing, as we saw earlier, is a category that we have not had much success in spending money.
We have not.
We've had projects come in that fell apart. There's a whole lot of reasons, but I think a lot of us on this committee want to get that number up. And this is an easy way with a good project. So.
And this
And there's
is
single adult housing, so no, these are not families, these are single people in each unit.
yeah, I believe the investment from our perspective is somewhere around just under $10,000 a unit. Am I
Just over.
Just over.
just over?
24 units.
Just over, yeah.
But that's,
So just to give everybody a little bit of perspective. Rich, Terry, you had a comment?
Yes, one, I want to say that I agree wholeheartedly with John Morton's comments and also John Lenahan's comments in the terms of need. As a member of the planning board and listening to Father Bill's presentation a couple of weeks ago, I have to echo the comments about transportation, not only from the members of this board, but also members of the community who were at the meeting. I think transportation concern is a great one, and it will certainly enhance, if we can have adequate transportation for your tenants, that would greatly please, I think, many people in this town. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Dwight?
Not to get too deep into the historical weeds, but if you look at the back boundary of your property, the angle that comes up from the railroad tracks, that happens to be the site of the old road from Easton to Stoughton before Route 138 was built. And so there's actually, back in the woods, either on your property, the next one down, there's a cool stone wall that goes on both sides of the old road. So it's just saying that you're close to, you know, historic property there, and you're doing nothing but enhancing it as far as I can see. So I share the enthusiasm that everyone else has expressed.
Thank you, Dwight.
Maybe someday we'll put a sign there.
I want to go out there and take a look now.
Rich, did you have a follow-up question, or is your hand up errantly? It's up errantly by the sounds of it. Okay. If there's no further discussion, I'd ask for a motion on the pre-application.
So moved.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Dwight?
Yes.
Don Brady?
Yes.
Rich Terry?
He said yes.
You're muted, Rich.
Yes.
Thank you. John Morton?
Yes.
John Linehan?
Yes.
Larice? Michael?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we'll expect a full application. Depending on when that comes in, it'll be November or December that we'll see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thank
being
you.
here, all of you.
Contact me and, you know, whatever I can do for you, in terms of putting the full application
Okay.
together.
Yeah, I did have a couple of questions about the
He's the guy to talk to.
notification, who we're notifying
I
or
was
when.
wondering on development, are you developing the property or are you a fundraiser?
Me? Oh, no, I develop I coordinate the whole team, the architects and attorneys and, I
Through
get everyone.
NeighborWorks primarily?
Yeah,
or-
well, I've been an independent consultant for
Oh,
35 years, and about 2.5 years ago, I agreed to put most of my work through NeighborWorks, and then most of my work outside of NeighborWorks is with Father Bill's. But
Sure,
I've been working with Father Bill's for like 25 years.
Yeah, so we've got
Yeah,
about
most
probably
of their projects.
25 housing projects like this, and Emily's pretty much done every one of them.
Okay.
It's a
Well, thank
consistent
you.
team.
And Barry's the man to get that
Right,
full
and that's
application
due by
to. He'll
October
work with
25th.
you.
Yep, no problem.
Yep.
Great.
So he's very knowledgeable and he's my right hand, so, which in turn makes him all of our right hand.
That's right.
So thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
here
All right,
tonight.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing that full app. All right, administrative items. Barry, we do not have any
Don't have
minutes,
any
am I
minutes
correct?
today. Nope.
Okay. The last CPC expired term to be sworn in is Mr. Morton. John, have you managed to get up to town hall?
I was going to today. I had good intentions, but didn't get there. I'm sorry to say.
Okay, I am getting a little bit concerned. Do you think you can make an effort to get up there before our next meeting in November?
Yes, I will. I promise. I solemnly swear.
Thank you so much, John. Any other unanticipated new business or emergency matters tonight to come before us? Hearing nothing. Our next meeting is scheduled for November 1st, which is a Wednesday, the first Wednesday of the month. And I think we're going to have a very busy one. We did put off a lot of updates tonight in an effort to keep this to a 4-hour slog, which we've actually done a very good job of, everybody, so thank you.
Before we adjourn,
Yep.
just going back to Rich, he did mention that he has something on Cape and.
Oh, yeah, Rich, if you want to give us a brief update as part of the unanticipated from the Cape, and I'd be more than happy to hear that.
Yes, I'm very pleased to announce that
Thank you.
the Stoughton Foundation has delivered a check for $25,000 as the first portion of their grant process. That $25,000 is already been earmarked, the contract for the landscape architect firm of Dawson Walker, who has redesigned Chuck Dog Park to meet the Stoughton Foundation's criteria, so that when we go to bid, we will be eligible for anywhere between $221,000 and $225,000 from the Stoughton Foundation for the construction of the dog park. So the timeline for getting this architectural information, based on today's receipt from the landscape architect, William Larson, is they expect to have 90% of the construction set review at the end of November. And it's anticipated that we'll be able to go to bid for the entire project of the off-street parkings, walkways, community garden, and dog park in mid-December or early July.
Early January, you mean?
Yes, go to bid. And once the bids are in, it's anticipated that they'll break ground as soon as possible in the springtime, March, April. based on my experience with Warner Larson, and they've done other work for the town, they tend to be very conservative and also responsive. So that I will share this document with everyone, along with the construction contract documents that they provided as well, and they'll be in your packet for the next meeting.
Thank you so much, Rich. And they're predicting 70-degree weather for January, so we could probably get going. John Morton, you had a quick comment?
Yeah, I want to thank Richard. I mean, he has done this almost single-handedly, and enormous value to the town. And it was great thanks to you, Richard, for what you've done. Well, I have a good team, and I have to tell you that the engineering department of the town of Stoughton has dedicated their newest engineer as part of the team moving forward. And I think it's a good policy for all the projects so that we don't run into these unforeseen, like we saw at the Stoughton baseball park.
Right.
And I think it's a nice model that they've now started to use for projects like this. I'd like to say one other thing, Mr. Chairman. I would hope that at the next meeting, we reconsider the $145,000 that was allocated for lights at the school board, with the invitation to the petitioner to give us some summary, because if it is their view that that's not going to be used, it's essential that we free up that fund, and therefore we would go to the town meeting with a decision.
Yeah, John, just so, I mean, you know, that organization obviously didn't want to throw anybody under the bus. I am not held to any of those standards. The bottom line is there was no design thought to the project, only a desire to have lights for the kids to play under. The project was written in an article specifically enough where if you couldn't get it all done, you couldn't get any of it done. So we intend, obviously, on rescinding that money. As I said, I think it took them a lot of courage to come and ask that, but, you know, Heather, although she presented this, really got this 3 days prior to town meeting. So I do still give her a lot of credit for the hard work she put in to play catch up, but at the end of the day, they can't spend the money, so we'll be rescinding it, no questions.
One of the benefits.
That's right, and by the way, I'm not criticizing them at all.
No, it happened. I mean, I'm not trying to criticize them either, but when this came about, this committee will remember I gave them the option of separating the two in two separate motions, and they chose not to do that. That puts them in a position where they can't do any of it. So at the end of the day, we're going to start afresh, and that's okay, you know, but what this committee decides to do remains to be seen, and I think we could start to hash that out in the full application. And let them bring the full application. If we decide, hey, we're willing to allocate X amount of dollars, that's what this committee's willing to allocate. And I'm not sure we allow them to dictate that to us, although John Linehan made some very good points about safety and ensuring that those are a priority for this, new project. So with that said, let's see where it takes us and we'll go from there. All right. Dwight?
Well, I just suggested, I don't know to the extent that budget material is communicated to us by Michael or whatever, so that even before we come into the meeting, we can have had our own thoughts of balancing out our resources, what's being asked and what our resources are, to have that in front of us before we've gone in and thought about it a little. I know I would appreciate that.
Mike, is there any sense that you'll be able to get that 7 days prior to the meeting?
I just want to point out that the town accountant's office is shorthanded. And
More than shorthand.
Yeah, and the reports are due the day before our meeting to the state. So if they don't get them to Michael, he can't get them to us. So.
Yeah, and I've been a little maybe haphazard, if you will, because typically we're looking at past spending. Obviously, for future where thought needs to go into it, we'll make every effort to get it into people's hands with time to think about it. A simple,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean,
So your point is well taken, Dwight, but it sounds like there
timing
may
is still
be
tight.
some logistical concerns about being able to get us the information early. But I do hear what you're saying, and remember, you know, even if we get the full applications and schedule them, we're not bound to make a decision that night. We can wait on that financial information, which we may have to do. The one thing I will say is I don't really have a lot of wiggle room on our monthly meeting because we have a town meeting starting the following Monday, and we really can't meet at the same time. I actually already ran into a problem with the redevelopment authority on that, so we're playing a little bit of balance. So the brunt of what we may be doing may end up happening in December when we have all that information and we're able to process it for a period of time. In an effort to keep things moving, I think it's good that we're moving forward with our November 1st meeting. But, I mean, we have essentially 3 meetings ahead of town meeting, annual town meeting, to work out the details after that. So, worst case scenario, we can do it in December, January, and February if need be. Doesn't mean we can't put our articles forward, it just means we haven't fully made our decisions, that's all. So.
December is gonna be rough, because I'm gonna be far away in a different time zone.
When?
The first week of December.
In December?
I'm
No
in
kidding.
Hawaii for a couple of weeks.
Oh,
Nice.
yeah.
The end of November into December.
So they have internet there.
We'll work it
They
out.
do, they do. And I'll probably be using the internet, but not for
They
this.
have internet there. So,
We'll have a meeting there.
yeah, you can all pay for us to go to Hawaii and we'll have our meeting there. I'd accept the motion to adjourn at this point. Excellent.
Seconded.
By roll call, Dwight,
Yes.
Don Brady,
Yes.
Rich Terry,
Yes.
John Morton,
Don't sleep.
Nod.
just nod.
John Morton, let's say
Blink
yes.
twice, John.
Gotcha, John Linehan.
Yes.
Larice, Michael.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you all for being here and thank the public for watching. Have a good night all.